And all Tua did was step in for his team during the national championship game on live television and play his first game of college football with Alabama and be like, yeah, I'm just going to throw darts all over the field and win the college national championship. And everyone was like, that's insane. And then I'm going to go have hip surgery, have my team threaten to replace me with a rapist, and that's all I hear about. And then have my coach fired, get a new head coach this year, and then Tyreek Hill fall onto my lap, and then play really well with Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. And then Tua get hurt, them sputter along, they lose a few games, and then Tua comes back, and it takes them a little bit to get going. And then once they do get going, now they're just steamrolling people. And Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill are a combo. It's like you can't game plan for it. And the addition of Jeff Wilson is very underrated because Jeff Wilson was playing amazing in San Francisco. And he's someone who's familiar with the philosophy because he just went from Kyle Shanahan and Mike McDaniels coached him last year. So Mike McDaniels also very familiar with him. And then just Tua, it's like he's just playing good football. He's not doing too much, and he's not making any mistakes. His past 3 games, he's thrown for a predictable, 300 yards, 3 touchdowns, no turnovers.
This is the stats.
Which is something like you don't expect from a guy like Tua. No one did, but it's like you look up and then you're like, wait a minute. We had Tua, Burrow, and Herbert, and then Tua is on pace to be one of the best quarterbacks in the league this year and then legitimately contend for a spot. He's all of a sudden you look up and you're the leader of the AFC East. You're better than Mac Jones and Zach Wilson, who everyone was talking up, even though you're only like a year or 2 older than those guys. And then you're not Josh Allen or Patrick Mahomes, but I would definitely take you over Dak Prescott at this point.
Yeah, no doubt. Patrick, this is the thing with Tua. This year, 71% completion, 18 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, QBR of 118. Those are Madden numbers. Those are Madden NFL football numbers right there. We're talking about throwing for 300 yards a game, extremely efficient, and in every game that you don't go to the hospital, you're undefeated. In every game that you don't go to the hospital the last 12 games, 12-0.
Right.
With Tua. And if we're talking about the MVP race, right? Josh Allen's out of it, absolutely, after last game, after you absolutely laid a turd against Minnesota.
Right.
So now, if we're talking about Minnesota, if we're talking about the MVP race, right? It's got to be Patrick Mahomes, Jalen Hurts, and Tua Tagovailoa. And honestly, Tua, with all the adversity that he's had to deal with everything that you mentioned, hip surgery, being drafted by the Dolphins, starting 1-7 with Brian Flores, whispers around the organization, are we going to trade him to Houston, the godforsaken hellhole that is Houston Texans, for Deshaun Watson and all of his baggage? Have a rally where you win 7 consecutive games, get back into the playoff hunt. Mike McDaniels takes over, and it's been absolutely electric since then. You throw for 469 yards, 6 touchdowns in a game, and then these concussion things that happen, and now just steamrolling teams again.
Yeah.
And Tyreek Hill on pace to have the greatest wide receiver season of all time. So basically what I'm saying is I think Tua should be right there in the MVP conversation. I don't think it's a hot take.
No, it's not a hot take because, well, who has Tua faced that's a former MVP or an MVP caliber player? And you can point to the Ravens game and the Bills game. And in the Ravens game, all he did was throw 6 touchdowns to come back from being down 28-7. I'd say that's pretty valuable. A quarterback who cannot be faced by being down 3 touchdowns, quarterback that actually cares enough to come back in that game. And it just shows how competitive he is. And that's very valuable. And then you go up against the Bills at home. It's a sluggish game. You play well. You don't have an amazing game, but you do just enough to win. And then you beat Josh Allen head to head. And then just going for 300 yards, 3 touchdowns, not turning the ball over. It just reminds me a lot of Drew Brees. I mean, Drew Brees he never had the biggest arm. He was never very athletic. He couldn't move, but what was he? Very accurate, very mobile, and could see the field. And I think you can make a lot of comparisons with Drew Brees and Tua at this point, especially because Drew Brees always had a lot of talent around him on offense. And now Tua with Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, he's shown that if my team isn't here, it's not quite the same team. And you can't just say, oh, he's an average quarterback excelling with talent. It's like, no, they weren't the same team with him. And then that was with Teddy Bridgewater, who's like a good quarterback. He's very solid. So it's solid. You can't really make that argument with Tua, especially because it's like, it seems like he does take that team to another level. And it's a Dolphins team that was in disarray last year, started 1-7, then got really hot. And this year, it's not like your division's easy. You have 2 playoff teams from last year that you're going up against.
Not only that, you are one of only 2 divisions in football that every team in there is above 500.
Yes.
Because actually, they're the only ones, because the NFC East, the Commanders are 5-5, Patriots are 5-4. So you're literally the only division in football where every single team in that division is above 500,
and you're undefeated.
And in the playoffs at the moment. We're talking about the playoff picture.
Right.
Every single team in the AFC East is in the playoffs right now.
Yeah, and you're undefeated in division,
and you're number 1 in the division.
You're number 1.
The most important part of it all. So credit to